is a really important moment for us all to join together to talk about how we can best advocate for refugees. So I'm really excited that I have friends on the call. I should say that my name is Liza Lieberman. I'm Director of Advocacy and Outreach at HIAS, which is the Jewish Community's Refugee Agency. I'm joined by my friends Jen Smyers from Church World Service, Reverend Dr. Sharon Stanley Ray from the Christian Church Disciples of Christ, Ariel Bailey from IRC in Dallas, and Bill Mefford with Americans United for Separation of Church and State. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it off to Jen, who is going, I'm going to kick it off to Jen, who is going to start with giving us a national legislative update and provide some context for our call here. So go ahead, Jen.
Great, thanks. Can you hear me, Liza?
Yes.
Great. Okay, thanks again, everyone, for being on. So as you know, I'm sure you've seen in the paper, this week is a really busy week in Washington, D.C. We are looking at three, actually more than three, but three that are relevant to refugee and immigration issues, confirmation hearings in the U.S. Senate. So President-elect Trump has nominated Senator Jeff Sessions to be Attorney General. He's nominated General Kelly to serve as the Secretary of Homeland Security, and he has nominated Rex Tillerson to serve as the Secretary of State. And all three of those nominations now have to go to the U.S. Senate for confirmation hearings. So Senator Sessions' confirmation hearing will be tomorrow. It starts at 9:30 a.m. tomorrow. General Kelly's confirmation hearing also begins tomorrow. I think it starts at 3:30. And then Mr. Tillerson's confirmation hearing starts this Wednesday at 9:15. So they're literally back-to-back and overlapping. And there are major concerns that we have, especially about Senator Sessions' nomination. Senator Sessions has a really storied history of racism, xenophobia, anti-immigrant sentiments, anti-refugee sentiments, anti-Muslim sentiments that he has voiced very openly and very publicly during his career. And so I think it's really beholden on all of us in the faith community to make sure that we're lifting up those concerns that we have about Senator Sessions' nomination, specifically that we are worried that he will not apply the rule of law evenly to all people, regardless of their religion, their nationality, their status. And that's essentially what the Attorney General needs to be doing, is equally and evenly applying the law in a just way. We also, in looking at the Kelly and Tillerson nominations, we have some concerns that are less related to them personally, but more related to the campaign rhetoric that we heard and the administration policy proposals that are likely to come when it comes to immigrant and refugee rights. So now is a really pivotal time for folks to call your senators. And you'll see, for those of you who are looking at the PowerPoint slides that were sent out or who are on the webinar, you'll see a little draft script that obviously you can modify when you call your senators, just saying, I'm your constituent. And as you prepare for these confirmation hearings, ask the nominees to affirm the importance of refugee resettlement. So if you click on the link that's at the bottom of this slide, which is interfaithimmigrationorg/confirmation hearings, and we'll make sure that that link is put up in the chat box as well. You can click that link and it will give you a state-by-state alphabetical listing so that you can find your state and you can immediately see which one or maybe both of your senators are on the relevant committees that will be considering these nominees. And that's the best way to make an impact right now on these confirmation hearings. When your senators know that their constituents are calling and asking for them to really be champions on refugee resettlement as we go into these confirmation hearings, that can make a really major difference. So please make that call today. Maybe when you get off the phone with us today, you can make that call right away. Make a call tomorrow. Make a call Wednesday. Never hurts to call more often. And also, please send this action alert to your friends via email, via text message, maybe on Facebook, on Twitter. You can just post this direct link link to encourage really everyone to lift up their voices right now. We'll go to the next slide because I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that we are worried might happen in the coming months and some of the ways that we can really be motivated to take action right now when our voices are so critically needed. So it goes without saying that we are concerned that the incoming administration may make a move to stop, pause, or reduce refugee resettlement, could make a move to cut funding for resettlement or not resettle certain populations due to their religion or their nationality or their country of origin. We're also concerned that the incoming administration could essentially allow local communities to veto refugee resettlement by responding to local resolutions that are against resettlement or local anti-refugee sentiment, and to say, because of that anti-refugee sentiment, we won't send refugees to those areas. We're concerned that anti-refugee bills will be introduced in Congress. Last Congress, we saw more than 80 anti-refugee bills introduced, and these bills could really redefine what it means to be a refugee. They could redefine really important anti-trafficking protections for young people and for Central American refugees. They could, mandate surveillance on refugees or restrict refugees' access to travel back to their countries, to rebuild their countries, or to visit a sick or dying relative. So there are a lot of things at stake. We're also concerned, obviously, given the campaign rhetoric, that the new administration could mandate a registry for Muslims or individuals from certain nationalities. And, regardless of the policy changes, we're very concerned in the continued rise that we see in hate crimes, in abuse, in discrimination, and in fear that's being perpetrated among communities, especially immigrant and refugee communities, many of whom have already fled persecution, have already dealt with enough. So I say all of this not to discourage us. I actually think that we really need to focus in on what it means to be part of the faith community, what it means to be in solidarity with refugees and immigrants. And for such a time as this, our leadership here, our action, our organizing with our communities is really critical. So we'll go to the next slide. I want to talk a little bit about state legislation. And as many of you know, if you've been on some of the webinars in the past, last year in 2016, we saw 52 anti-refugee bills introduced in 19 different states. And the blue states here are the ones that dealt with anti-refugee legislation. Now, fortunately, we were able to defeat nearly all of these bills. There was actually only one resolution that passed in Tennessee that was just a resolution. It didn't actually necessarily have programmatic impacts on refugee resettlement. But we need to do the same thing in 2017, and it's going to be harder this year, admittedly. But I think that we're all up to the task if we can make sure to do all of what we need to do to organize our communities. Already in 2017, in the 10 days that we've had so far in 2017, there are already 16 anti-refugee bills that have been filed or pre-filed in Florida, Missouri, Montana, and Texas. So I'd encourage folks to see if your state had legislation introduced last year or if they have legislation introduced this year. And you can check that out by going to interfaithimmigration.org/state-by-state legislation. And again, we'll make sure that these links are put up in the chat function so that you can click them and go there easily. So you can see what's introduced, and we keep that website fairly updated so you can see what's going on in your state and different opportunities for you to lift up your voices in solidarity with immigrants and refugees. We'll go to the next slide because I wanted to provide some examples of what's been effective in the past. In Florida, they had a bill introduced last session that would have stopped refugee resettlement in Florida. And people in Florida organized and delivered letters signed by more than 150 faith leaders, and they were able to keep the bill from moving forward in the Senate, which was a very, very powerful way to organize. In Arizona, there was a bill that would have mandated a yearly audit of refugee serving agencies, which is a difficult bill because, well, you know, what's an audit? Is it a big deal? But it really is. A yearly audit mandate is a way to really bury refugee resettlement offices in paperwork so that they're not able to fulfill their mission in an effort to really shut them down. But folks in Arizona organized a sign-on letter and a press conference, and again, they were able to stop that bill from advancing in the Senate. And then also in South Carolina, there was a bill that would have essentially put refugees on a public database and also hold refugee resettlement agencies liable for any crime or act of terrorism that a refugee commits. And they were able to get together with their community leaders and faith leaders for a very powerful press statement and faith leader letter. And again, they were able to stop that bill from moving forward in their state house. And again, this is just kind of a glimpse into a few states. A bunch of states did similar tremendous action last year. But in Tennessee, even though their bill actually passed, we saw many action alerts and leadership from the faith community to push back against this bill. And as a result, the governor did not sign the bill. The bill still moved forward because it's a resolution and doesn't require the governor to sign. But again, we saw folks in a very difficult climate show up for refugee rights and stop things from being worse than they otherwise would have been. So we'll go to the next slide, and I really want to emphasize this even more than the other pieces that I've discussed already. We know for a fact that anti-refugee groups are actively encouraging states and localities to request to essentially be able to veto refugee resettlement in their localities. And these are folks who are anti-immigrant, anti-Muslim, anti-refugee, in many cases are working alongside hate groups, and they're starting to get traction. We know that Governor Scott Walker of Wisconsin already included in a letter to President-elect Trump that he wants his state to have a bigger role in determining which refugees come to Wisconsin, citing the vetting process, even though, as we know, refugees are the most screened individuals in the United States, undergoing security checks through Department of Defense, Department of State, Department of Homeland Security, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the National Counterterrorism Center. But again, we're seeing anti-refugee groups be able to basically play off of people's fears, and also the fact that a lot of people don't know a lot about the refugee program, to get people to try to essentially stop resettlement in their states. And something that's very concerning, so last year when we saw some of these efforts, they weren't necessarily moving forward, and the reason they weren't moving forward is because the Obama administration, the current administration, was saying to those states and localities, look, we know some people don't like resettlement, but a lot of people do support resettlement, and we're not going to stop resettling refugees and stop doing what's right just because you can gin up a bunch of folks who hate refugees. Unfortunately, looking at the incoming administration, it's really unclear what their response will be, but I think looking at the campaign rhetoric and the individuals who are being nominated and who are in advisory roles, it's likely that the new administration could respond to these anti-refugee requests and anti-refugee resolutions and essentially allow these localities to stop resettlement in their areas. And that's really chilling to think about. So now is really a critical time for us to be proactively lifting up welcome in our communities and urging our national officials and our local officials and congregations and businesses and schools and hospitals to really proactively voice their support of resettlement, so that even when the incoming administration is hearing from anti-refugee folks, they're hearing way more from pro-refugee folks, and that's really the goal of the next slide and the action that we're asking folks to take. So we're asking folks to make your voices heard, and You can do this again right after you get off the call today. And really, I would encourage folks to call their members of Congress and their local officials every day. There's got to be some moment when you're sitting in line or waiting for traffic or waiting for, your daughter to get out of soccer practice or whatever it might be. You can use this line. It's a 1-866-940-2439. Again, that's 866-940-2439, and that will direct you to the Capitol switchboard, where you can be connected with your senators and your representative. And you can also go to this resource that we've linked here, usa.gov/elected-officials. And that website will also help you figure out, who are my state legislators, who are my, city council members, or my county officials, my mayor, etc. So you can see this action alert, which again will remain updated at www.rcusa.org/advocate-now. And again, I know I'm throwing out a lot of web links. We'll make sure that they're all in the chat function so that they're easily clickable and that everybody's able to access them. So we're asking folks to call not only their national elected leaders, but your local elected leaders so that they can hear that their communities support resettlement. And we'll go to the next slide. We've put together what we hope is a really helpful resource for you to be able to do just this. And it includes the action alert, and it also includes the ways that you can set up meetings with your senators, with your representatives when they're home. Congress spends some time in D.C., but they spend a lot of time back in their home districts and home states. And so you can set up a meeting, request a meeting with a couple other of your partners, and be able to approach them and talk to them and have hopefully an open conversation about why your community supports immigrant and refugee rights. And so this toolkit has some great action alerts, some draft handouts, some step-by-step ways that you can set up these meetings, and hopefully some really helpful resources. So again, you can find this toolkit at rcusa.org. And we'll make sure, again, that all these links are put up here in the chat function so everybody can see them. So I will turn it back to Liza to see if we have any questions or next steps. But I'm grateful for everybody tuning in and for us using this opportunity as a moment to educate ourselves and to be able to educate our community members and to be able to organize and make our voices heard at this really critical time.
Thank you so much, Jen. This is Liza again. There's a really comprehensive and helpful landscape of everything that's going on right now, and it is a lot. I'm reminded that we're only 9 days into the new year and just a few days into the new Congress, but we are soon going to be slammed, and already many of us are slammed, and we really are lucky to have each other and really need this support in this community more than ever, I think. So thank you, Jen. I'm going to encourage people, given our timing, to please ask any burning questions that you have through the chat function of join.me, or you can email me the question if that's easier. And I'm going to kick it off to our colleague, Reverend Dr. Sharon Stanley Ray, to talk a little bit about the Refugees Welcome campaign that has been organizing across the country, and many of you might have been involved with that. So Sharon, I'm going to kick it off to you. Are you there, Sharon? And as a reminder, anyone who's not speaking, please press *6 to make sure that
Can you hear me now?
And there's Sharon. Thank you.
Great. Okay, well, thank you, Liza. Thank you, Jen. Thanks especially to all of you who are taking time to dial in today. As folks have said, it's an incredibly challenging time, but also a time of opportunity, and we're very grateful that in this call in particular ways, we're really wanting to work hard to build partnerships much more strongly in local areas and among us as faith communities as well. And one of the advocacy teams that many of our faith communities, as well as other partners in Syrian and Muslim and additional organizations have been supporting, is the network called Refugees Refugees Welcome. And we want to switch to the next slide, and knowing that our goal is really literally to put into your hands the best ways that can help you follow through on the kind of advocacy priorities that Jen just outlined so well. We want to lift up 2 specific opportunities for doing that are brand new, just coming out. One is, as you see on the left side of the slide, our Hang Your Hearts with Refugees door hanger that has just been produced. These are available for $3 each. On them are included the phone number that is needed to call to your senators and representatives, that congressional switchboard number that Jen referred to earlier, as well as the link to help you and everyone else who is nearby to you be able to locate who your leaders are, particularly in this time where so many of the leaders have changed, and we want to ensure that you're able both to build relationships with them and to be able to get connected with them. So this is available. The way to be able to order some is indicated on this slide. And again, you'll be receiving all this information after the webinar. But our goal is for you to use them, just like the young woman who was in the slide before, one of our partners in Columbus, who is looking at hers and making the call literally to her legislators at this moment. Also on the right side is pictured the type of bracelets that are under production right now in Uganda as another kind of resource that we want to make available to you, made by refugees, made for us to use to support refugees. And what will be, you'll see as the exact style of this bracelet as they're ready in just a couple of weeks, will be bracelets that have both purple and red beads, to help remind, as you look at the door hanger on the left, that you see a child who is a refugee pictured. She happens to be wearing purple. You see a mother and a family of refugees wearing red. So you'll have on your bracelet purple and red beads to remind you how often refugees are indeed children and families who are suffering. We'll go to the next slide. We also want to invite you to write letters now, and this is with some urgency, that this would be a task that we hope you would take on today, tomorrow, in any church meetings you might have this week, and as much as you can through especially this Friday. If you don't get to it till Sunday, we still want you to do it and send it in, or Friday night if you're with a Jewish community. But we want these to be sent by January 13th, if possible, certainly no later than Monday morning, to Meredith Owen at Church World Service. And what we're hoping for are letters, pictures of refugees that your church community, others in your neighborhood may be working with, friendships that you share with refugees. These are time for a brief testimony to be offered about the meaning of refugees in your life. And these will be going to President-elect Trump just immediately as he is preparing to be inaugurated. And they'll play an important role in helping to document how much faith communities and partners and neighbors are really engaged and ready to continue to engage with refugees. So we'll go to the next slide. We also want to invite you, as we know, February is going to be coming up soon, a month when often romantic love is celebrated, but we're so excited to have an opportunity to engage with many national organizations, Oxfam, World Relief, others, and an organization called Purpose, which works to uplift through media and had worked actually last summer to uplift the stories of our first ever refugee team with the Olympics. They will be partnering together with us with Refugees Welcome in encouraging communities all around the country to have big heart dinners with refugees, and hopefully to be able to have these, as we say, during the month of February, if at all possible. You see a sample of a welcome dinner that was held earlier in the year below on the screen, and you see also the two pictures on the right from one of our partner organizations in North Carolina of refugees who literally united a husband and his wife. She finally was able to fly in on Valentine's Day. So in every way that you can, we hope you'll build unity with and among refugees that you know in your area around the time of Valentine's Day, and look forward to lots more information to come out very, very soon about this effort. The materials are under production right now. We'll go to the next slide. And we also want to invite you to save the date of January the 30th at the same time, 4 p.m. It'll be from 4 to 5 for our next Refugees Welcome webinar. We are excited about this webinar in some particular ways because you see the multiple organizations listed on this slide that are Syrian and or Muslim community organizations that are partners, founding partners with the Refugees Welcome Initiative, and we'll be uplifting in particular the voices of leaders from these organizations to teach us about Muslim and Syrian cultural practices, to talk about the kinds of partnerships that they prefer, and to help us as we line out some great next steps together as partners in our goals to continue to encourage support for refugees all around the country. We also, as we move to the next slide, want to remind everyone to please consider resettling refugees in your area. You see on this page a map of all the resettlement organizations that are located around the country. Obviously, there are not offices in every single location, but there are 9 different resettlement organizations around the country, and we hope that you will have opportunity to plug in to whichever one or ones of them are closest to you to find out how you can best support and welcome refugees in your area. It's as we build personal relationships with refugees that our advocacy becomes obviously much more powerful, that we're able to build partnerships of advocacy teams that reflect our faith communities and refugee communities, business communities, and others in our neighborhoods, so that as we make contact with our leaders, they can see the deep commitment that we have together. We'll go to the next slide. And also just know that you'll be receiving, along with the materials through this PowerPoint, a list of all of the offices around the U.S. as well, and that has contact names in it that goes together with the map. Already, we've talked about Refugees Welcome resources, and you can find them on the website listed. The RCUSA toolkit that Jen referred to earlier, we have the link to that as well. And certainly we encourage you to contact your own denominational and faith offices additionally. And I'm going to hand off now for a testimony of welcome that is happening out in Texas with some really vigorous, wonderful advocacy efforts. And we're so grateful to welcome Ariel Bailey, who is from the IRC office, working as an advocacy intern in Dallas. And so we turn it over to you now, Ariel.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. So, hi, I am Ariel from the IRC in Dallas, and I've been helping to organize our advocacy coalition. And we started back in August 2016, so just a few months ago, with about 20 members. Can we also move along to the next slide, please? Thank you. So since August, we have grown to almost 100 members now, representing about 40 community organizations. And this growth has happened pretty organically from our members recommending other organizations or other people who want to get involved, or people from the community hearing about what we're doing and reaching out to us. So it's pretty exciting to start to garner that kind of enthusiasm from the community. And our members represent a huge range of organizations, not just resettlement agencies, but also faith groups and school districts and civic and community organizations and local businesses that interact with refugees and support refugee resettlement. So with this membership, we've used it to share legislative updates and action alerts across all of our networks. And we've also met with 6 local state representative offices so far, and those have been pretty productive meetings where we're really educating representatives who haven't known much about refugee resettlement in their districts. So we've started to build some really good relationships there just by sending out small groups from within our coalition to meet with these representatives. And now in 2017, we are planning some new initiatives to try to be more proactive with our advocacy efforts in 2017. We are planning a refugee legislative briefing in the state capitol in Austin. And we're doing this in coordination with advocacy groups from all over the state. So we're sending a few people down, and at this briefing, we're going to be educating lawmakers on refugee resettlement in our state and covering some concerns that they have, as well as how refugee resettlement functions in Texas. And then we're also going to be meeting with legislators in their offices to follow up and lead them with some educational materials and really get to have that conversation with them. And then we're also planning an interfaith educational forum in Dallas, which is going to be leaders from a variety of local faith groups will get together and meet with legislators and elected officials from Dallas and other members of the community to discuss refugee resettlement in the local sense. So yeah, we're really excited to get all of these initiatives for 2017 going, and it's great to see other groups like our startup around the state and around the nation. So yeah, we're excited about that, and I'll pass it back to you guys. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Ariel. I hope you're all as inspired as I am by the work that's going on in Texas. I think it's really remarkable. Just one quick housekeeping reminder. I'm getting a little bit of feedback, so if you're not speaking, please press *6 at this point to mute yourself. Thank you. I'm still getting a little bit. If everyone can please press *6 to mute yourself. Great. Thank you. And we'll soon come to the discussion portion where you might need to unmute yourself. But at this point, I'd like to have everyone muted. So just before we move on to the next section of our webinar, which my friend and colleague Bill Mefford will explain momentarily, I just want to take a minute to acknowledge that many of us are fighting many fights at this critical moment. They're on the national, state, and local levels. Many people in our communities face enormous threats, and we want to best foster cooperation and collegiality and intersectionalism. So we were hoping to give a few minutes to have someone speak about the immediate and urgent fight to save the Affordable Care Act, which affects many immigrants in our communities and refugees as well. Unfortunately, our colleague Meg Olson from Network, the Catholic Social Justice Lobby, was not able to make it today, but Network is one of the groups. I'm sorry, I'm getting a lot of feedback. Please press *6 to mute yourself. Everyone, please press *6 to mute yourself. Thank you very much. So Network is one of the is working on this issue, and so instead of Meg presenting, we've provided a few links to learn more about this issue. One of the first link is to see which immigration statuses are currently qualified to apply for the ACA, and we've also provided information about how to receive further updates and action alerts to this issue. So the words protect our care to 7877. That's one way to get more information on this. So again, you can, and all this information will be sent later. So we've just given you a lot of information, and I just wanted to run through kind of a summary of what we've been talking about, and you'll get all of this via email, and I hope you will help us amplify these messages and send them to your colleagues and supporters.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
Thank you, yes. So as a summary, this is a really important moment actually to reach out to your national policymakers about this week's confirmation hearings, also to reach out to your state and local officials to make sure that they know that you support refugees in this critical moment. You can also encourage your policymakers to declare your community a welcoming community and do a welcome resolution, as Jen suggested. That's another great, really positive way to send a message of welcome. We encourage you to use the RCUSA toolkit, which includes a lot of materials, talking points, and information about how to best advocate for these issues. We can also encourage you to participate in some of the Refugees Welcome initiatives that Sharon shared, the door hangers, the bracelets, to show solidarity with refugee communities. Also, you can host an event, of course, in your community. One of them is a big heart dinner or a welcome event for refugees in your community. That's another great way to build some of these alliances. Also to send letters and photos of your support for refugees to illustrate your support. That the deadline for that is to send that by January 13th to Church World Service. And of course, to join the next Refugees Welcome webinar on January 30th, which you will all be getting more information about as that gets closer. And then the last two are to build firsthand relationships with refugees in your communities and help them have a warm welcome in their new communities. And again, that work is going on in almost every community in the country, and we hope you will help plug in if you haven't already. And the last one is to build your local and faith teams to support refugee issues. That is what we're going to turn to next and talk a little bit about the art of team building and start you connecting with your local allies. So with that, I'm going to kick it off to my friend and colleague, Bill Mefford.
Hey, Liza. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. Well, I'm so glad that so many folks are on. My name is Bill Mefford. I've to many of the folks, I wasn't able to get to some of the folks who were late in signing up, but I will include you with your teams. What we tried to do is that everybody who RSVP'd from the same state, we're trying to connect you guys all with each other. Many of you know each other already, but just in case. So one of the things I think you hear throughout, whether it was Jen sharing about some of the examples of folks doing really good advocacy efforts in Florida and other places around refugee issues, or the amazing story and work that Ariel was sharing about what they're doing in Dallas. The one thing I want to emphasize in all of that we do, the heart of all justice work, whether it's on refugee issues, whether it's on healthcare, whether it's on reducing gun violence, eliminating mass incarceration, whatever the issue may be, the heart of all justice work is relationships. And so that is where the majority of our time really needs to be focused in terms of building and immersing ourselves in relationships with people who are directly impacted by injustice, and also building relationships with those who have yet to enter into those relationships, including people in positions of influence and power. So in a few minutes, you guys, what we're going to do something kind of unique to the whole national grassroots call webinar thing. We are going to list, not yet, but we're going to list calls that are specific to states. So you'll have a conference call specific to Wisconsin, specific to Ohio, to Iowa, to Maryland, to whatever state you're in. And therefore, some of you who are meeting together and listening to this call, which is really, really good. We wanted to facilitate that as much as we could. You'll call in together as one group, and then there might be other groups scattered or individuals scattered throughout the state. And hopefully within a span of about 30, 45 minutes time, you'll have a facilitated conversation around some specific questions that we want to ask you guys to at least begin the work of how do we build a coordinated effort in our particular state to accomplish X, Y, and Z. And you guys will help decide. You guys will decide what X, Y, and Z is. So before I go through the team building and we get to the questions, I want to tell you a real quick story. We've had lots of good stories. I want to tell you a really good story, and it comes from one of my favorite places on earth. It comes from Iowa. I absolutely love Iowa. So in January 2015, Senator Chuck Grassley, who's a senator from Iowa, he's also the chair of the Judiciary Committee. It was escaping my memory for some reason. He's the chair of the Judiciary Committee. He's from Iowa. He got on the floor of the Senate in January of 2015 and said that he would never allow, made a really bad speech for anybody who was interested in anything having to do with mass incarceration. He said he would never allow any bill to proceed through his committee that lessened the sentences for low-level drug users or those who had been convicted of low-level drug crimes. So that a lot of people were upset because we were really hoping to get something through the committee and hopefully passed in 2015. And so a lot of people were upset and not sure that we were going to be able to get anything done, except for folks in Iowa. And folks in Iowa got together because they had known each other, they had built relationships, and they decided that what they wanted to do is they didn't want to so much flip him so that he would be in support of sentencing reform legislation, but what they wanted to do is they simply wanted to get him to allow legislation to proceed through his committee. Like, he could vote against it, but just allow it to proceed, because he was saying he wouldn't even allow it to proceed. So they got together, they put together a letter for faith leaders. They had about 130 faith leaders in Iowa sign it, urging him to allow sentencing reform legislation to proceed. A few bishops, Catholic bishops, some other folks, some other bishops got together, wrote an op-ed for the Des Moines Register, urging him to allow to allow sentencing reform legislation to proceed. The Des Moines Register wrote an editorial saying to Senator Grassley, you need to listen to the faith folks in your state. There was call-ins. There were specific to no other members really like Grassley in that he tweets. He handles his own Twitter account, so he tweets his own messages. So we had thunderclap, and we had lots of folks who were tweeting him nonstop. Not nonstop, but a lot. And eventually, so in January, he made that statement, and by May of that year, he not only was going to allow sentencing reform legislation to proceed through his committee, he called together like 7 other Senate offices, Republican and Democrat, and they put together a bipartisan reform bill called the Sentencing Reform and Corrections Act, and they actually put it through committee, got it through committee easily because he's the chair, and only one of the ones who voted against him, not unsurprisingly, was Senator Sessions, which is another reason why we need to oppose him becoming Attorney General. But eventually, so it passed out. It was going to go to the floor, but Mitch McConnell, who's not a very good leader, didn't do a good job and didn't bring it to the floor, so it didn't pass. But literally in 6 months, they had flipped this guy to not only allow legislation to proceed through the committee, but they used strategies, they used smart tactics. The most important thing is they worked together and they coordinated their work, and they were able to flip this guy from being against sentencing reform to then, and it wasn't a bill that we got everything we wanted on it, but it was a good bill, and it was a bill that many organizations supported, and it actually should have been passed and made law, but that we can't control who controls Congress. So what I'm saying with all of that is just simply this: when you look at the team building training, essentially what we need to do more than anything is it's a team building. Is not an email list. It's not people who are told by some higher power, bishop or somebody else, that you have to serve on a committee. It's not a resume builder, and it's not for people who are disconnected from the people most directly impacted by injustice. It's two or more people with a shared passion and love for people who are directly impacted by injustice, who want to make specific and concrete change in a real area. So one of the things you're going to do, and you can go to the next slide, but one of the things you guys are going to do in this initial call, and we want to urge people that this is the beginning. I mean, many of you are working in coalitions, and we don't want to undermine that, but what we want to do is we want to add people to the leadership that you're already providing and the incredible things that you're already doing. But we want you to go through four quick questions. And you won't be able to mine all the different things that are associated with each question. You're not going to be able to get full answers, that you could do. Typically, when we do these kinds of things, we do them over the course of a day. So we're doing this in 45 minutes because at 5:30 Eastern Time, 4:30 Central Time, what am I thinking? Yeah, 3:30 Mountain Time, 2:30 West Coast Time. We're going to all come back onto this line, and we're going to share. That's the best part of the call. We're going to share what we've decided to do and ways in which certainly those of us who are in Washington, D.C. and who have nothing better else to do can help you. So the four things you're going to do is this, real quick. Before you do the four things, when you guys call up in a minute, we're going to list the states with the specific call-in numbers. It'll be a conference call number, then you'll add in your code, and you'll be joined with whoever else is from your state. If all you're hearing is music, then nobody else is calling in from your state, and you can come back online and we'll have a discussion for just individuals from states during this next 40-minute time. But what you need to do is you need to have one person take notes, have one person lead the discussion. If you are a control freak, please try and not be the person who leads. That's really, really annoying. And then make sure that you guys space out enough time to where you're done by 5:30, 4:30, 3:30, 2:30, and you call back in so that we can update and we can hear what else is going to be happening. Also, in the coming days, because I've had a number of folks email me about this, you are going to be getting all the information that you got that you can share around and that you can go through as a team after the webinar. We're going to be sending out everything. I'm going to be emailing everybody, continuing to make links and adding people in to your states because many of you signed up either today or yesterday. I just haven't had a chance to do that yet. So here are the four questions. I want you to think about the strengths of your local coalition or network. What are the things that are unique? Maybe you have really good facilities that can be used that are near the state capitol that can be used for press conferences. Maybe you have really, really good folks, good volunteers. Maybe you have good folks that are good spokespeople. Maybe you have access to good media. It's always about your resources. Always start with the people who are part of your groups. Don't think so much in terms of money, because most of you probably don't have any. But think in terms of people, because if you think in terms of people, you have endless strengths. So just spend a couple minutes on that. Then spend just 2 minutes, the least amount of time. Oftentimes we spend most of our time talking about who's not there, rather than talking about the people who are. So talk about who are the ones that you need to have one-on-one conversations with. Whether it's we don't have any specific faith groups that are we need more people from this specific faith group, or we need more people from this particular civil rights group, or whoever it may be. Or think in terms of individuals even that you need to go out and you need to have one-on-one conversations with. One of the things we talked about with team building is just having people's email doesn't mean you have a team, right? Teams are people that you get to email them because you've earned the right, because you have the relationship and you've spent the time with them so that they will actually pay attention to your email. Most people, if they don't have a conversation with someone, will not open their email. So think about the types of people and the people that you're missing and then begin to address how you're going to follow up. Third thing, what do we want to accomplish in the next 6 months? The question I often ask groups is, if we were to come back 6 months from today, which whatever day that would be, July 9th, and we were to say, what has changed in the last 6 months? What have we done? And Jen listed all these things that we could try and accomplish. What are the things, though, specifically that we want to try and accomplish during that time that's going to create change, right? So think in terms of like the group did in Iowa. They simply wanted to come back in, 5, 6, 7, 8 months and be able to say that Senator Grassley has allowed sentencing reform legislation to proceed through his committee. Now, they got even more than they asked for, but that's what they wanted. So be specific about the concrete change, and you're going to spend the most of your time on that. And then the last 5 to 7 minutes, what areas do we need help with? What can we help with in terms of those of us who are in D.C.? So we can talk about that more when we come back. So the third question gets the amount of time, but don't neglect the first one and don't spend the most of your time on the second one. So can you go ahead and switch to the next slide? Slides will be available. Oh, wow. Okay. So what you will do here in a minute, that's perfect. That's beautiful. What you'll do in a minute is you will hang up. Don't put us on hold. That's really annoying. Hang up the phone. You're going to call this number that's associated with your state. You're going to see who all's on there. Do some introductions real quick. Remember, we got to be quick on this. No long stories, no dissertations, and God, no, please, no sermons. Even though I know all of you can preach really well. So you're going to call, you're going to say who you are. One person's going to is going to lead. One person's going to take notes. And then you're going to go through the questions. At 5:30, 4:30, 3:30, 2:30, you're going to hang up. And then you're going to call back in, and we're going to all catch up on what we're going to do. And it's going to be beautiful because we're going to be hearing from people all across the country who are going to be doing specific things for change. Does everybody get what I'm talking about? Of course, you're muted. So I'm seeing you nod your heads. Yes. So if you need anything, email. Can I do this, Liza? Can I have them email me?
Absolutely.
Okay. So if you need something.
Or they can email me or they can put it on the chat.
Okay, put it on the chat, or you can email. I don't know how all that stuff works. My email is mefford@au.org. But anyway, so anything else we need to know before we break, Liza?
I don't think so. A lot of people in the chat are saying they have to get going, but they will be interested in knowing what happens in their local conversations. So as a reminder, we will send all this information and make sure everyone is connected after the fact. But if you can stick around, please call the lines that you're seeing. And I also circulated these numbers beforehand, and join your local discussions for about 30 minutes. And then call back in at 5:30. You'll have to call the original number. And so I'm going to keep this line open for those 30 minutes, and then hopefully we'll speak with you again soon. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us. And I hope you had fruitful discussions by your state. For those of you who weren't able to connect with others in your state, we apologize, but I think it's safe to say that there are people doing this work in every state in the union. They might not all have been available between 4 p.m. and 6 p.m. Eastern today, but we're going to do our best to connect you all to each other, and I think together we're going to be able to fight back anything that comes along, and we're certainly going to try. So as a reminder, we asked you all to answer 4 questions. First of all, what are the strengths of your local coalition and network? Second of all, who's missing from this group and who are some others that we want to have one-on-one conversations with. As Bill mentioned, that is one of the most important parts of organizing and advocacy in general. The third question was, what do we want to accomplish in the next 6 months? And the fourth question was, what areas do we need help with, and kind of identifying some of those areas for improvement. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up. Bill had a great reminder that if you could please email us with any notes from your conversations, that will certainly help us connect you all with others that we know of who couldn't make the call that want to join this effort. Are there any individuals that might want to share some of their feedback from their discussions? We can open this up for maybe 2 or 3 people to share. And as a reminder, you can unmute yourself by pressing *6.
This is Carol Shutt from Kentucky, and we decided that we needed to educate people about resources that are available to them. We learned that there are 5 groups in northern Kentucky that are working with immigrants, and there is a tremendous need for volunteers. If anyone is interested in that, they can contact the Kentucky Refugee Ministries, which is 859-226-5661. Any monetary contributions to these groups, of course, would be appreciated. We're going to try to find out ways to let our churches know what's going on. And lastly, we do want to be involved. We don't want to jump the gun and run out and start something all on our own. We would like to continue to be a part of this, connected with other groups in our area that might be interested in working on the same thing.
Which state is this calling in?
Kentucky.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carol.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anyone else that has some notes they'd like to share from their discussions?
I'm Sheila
like
Hurley from Virginia.
Pardon?
And so, sorry,
Who is
someone else.
Is that you, Carolyn? This is Alice from Virginia. One thing that I thought was very powerful was a suggestion by one of our group, Assad, was to try to think of a unifying image or phrase, find some way so that we don't get into this divisiveness, a kind of thing about what it is that, going back to my notes here, diversity, not disorder, and we have a lot of disorder now. I mean, Assad, if you're on, maybe you would like to speak to that. But I did have a thought that I'm an artist, and I'm thinking of that image we had of Obama in 2008. I'm not saying we needed a similar image, but if we had some kind of an image that caught fire on the internet, that was a positive, unifying kind of image and phrase that would counteract the negative tweeting and so on that we get on the internet. It would be more of a unifying kind of thing. That's just me reacting to something that another member of our group was bringing up.
Thank you very much. I think that's a great suggestion. Did someone have something else to add from Virginia? Okay. What about any other states? I think we have time for 1 or 2 more. A few takeaways from the state discussion.
This is Beverly Brewster reporting in from California.
Great. Go ahead, Beverly.
Okay, we had 8 of us on our call, and it was a great opportunity for us to just actually introduce ourselves to each other. A couple had been working together already, but the rest of us really benefited from finding out who each other were and what people are doing and identifying some shared priorities going forward. So we're going to share emails and share a little more about what our needs are and try to coordinate as we go forward. And there's a lot of interest in the Sanctuary City movement, the Sanctuary State movement, and the Sanctuary Church movement. So we want to really share information about that. Shared wisdom and experience, and then a lot of priority on legal support and due process for those in detention, and bills pending in the California State Senate and Assembly now dealing with immigration and possibly with legal representation. So we want to get galvanized and really work on strengthening relationships with new U.S. Senator Kamala Harris and her replacement, actually, and make sure that this is a top priority for our elected officials, as the first part of this webinar stressed. So we have a lot in common, and we'd like to, really continue networking to share our strengths.
Great. Thank you very much, Beverly.
Is Sheila on the call? I thought I heard Sheila from Virginia who was taking notes for us. This is Hassan Ahmed from McLean, Virginia.
Hi. Yeah, no, I don't think I heard her speak up.
I just saw a chat from her, though. She just sent a chat thing with her email.
Yes, she gave us that. Yeah.
Oh, she did. Okay. All right.
Yes, and for those not on the chat, I can see that she says, for folks from Virginia, please do email me. Her email address is sheila@incarnationparish.org.
Yeah, she had a bunch of notes for what we had talked about, but.
Mm-hmm.
So,
okay,
so my name is.
One more state. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Karen Simon. I'm from Maryland. So I think there were about 6 of us on the call, and a few of us knew like 1 or 2 other people. I think one of the big takeaways for us is to kind of to target, or if you want to say, to lobby Governor Hogan in Maryland. I mean, Maryland has traditionally been a state that has welcomed refugees, but some months ago he came out, with it seemed like anti-Muslim sentiment, and so I think that was one of the big takeaways that we like to figure out what would be the best and most effective way to do that, and we also talked about bringing along some refugees, and people who work with refugees would probably be one of the more effective ways of doing that. I mean, one of the strengths on the national level is that we are close to D.C., so that also on a legislative level that makes it easier for us.
Wonderful.
Right.
Thank you very much. Was one more
You're
person trying to give an update?
This is Paul Perez from Michigan.
Great. Go ahead, Paul.
Thanks. We had 8 people on our call from different areas of our state, which was really exciting. We were glad to meet each other, hear what we're doing, and look forward to meeting in the future. We determined that that we had some great strengths amongst us, that we were missing voices from some of the refugee resettlement agencies that we've been working with, and also an actual refugee, so someone who was affected, by the issue of refugee resettlement. Over the next 6 months, Kelsey Herbert from the Christian Reformed Church cast a really powerful vision of organizing a statewide rapid response network that would be able to conduct in-district meetings with elected officials when anti-refugee resettlement legislation is introduced, sort of at the state or in local. So we experienced a bill that was introduced in the lame duck session in December, and we anticipate that more legislation or resolutions like that may be introduced. So we want to be organized for that. And are thankful for national staff for hosting this, and encourage you to continue doing similar events that continue to educate and empower us around the nation. Thanks.
Great, thank you very much. And as someone who represents one of the refugee resettlement sites in Michigan, I would love to be a part of that conversation. And that's great to hear that you guys are proactively thinking about what is yet to come.
Hey, Liza,
sorry,
this is Sharon from Disciples in UCC. I just wanted to quickly report that we had 10 Disciples in UCCs meet together, including our Disciples General Minister and President, so we're grateful to have her call in with support. And we were from New Jersey, Maryland, D.C., North Texas, Indiana, Virginia, and Ohio. We'd love to see more conversions like the kind that happened in the Grassley story that Bill shared. So we will hope for that and hope to work towards that, in part by doing some freshening and reworking of our theological calling to engagement with refugees resources. And we want to find ways to continue to connect our congregations who may be outside the bounds, especially of resettlement organizations, but we know in this time their voices are particularly helpful. We want to share among region to region good efforts that are working and keep lifting up for those who are in the D.C., Maryland, Virginia area, the emergency responses of a network that are particularly important in having voices that are close enough to come to D.C. to do that, to respond. And we also had some conversation about our seminaries engagement, in particular Bright Seminary in Texas, but others we'd like to keep on encouraging. And we heard of wonderful models happening in the Baltimore area through the United Church of Christ area organization, the conference, and the Chesapeake Association that's happening there that is linking with Families for Resettlement, but also linking them across state lines and sharing resources additionally.
Great, thank you so much, Sharon. Our last day update comes from North Carolina. Someone on the phone that wants to give that update. Someone able to give that? There was a note on the chat. Going once? Okay. All right. So
I did want to say, if there's a nanosecond, may I say something? Judy
Sure.
Quick from Alabama, that we do have things going on in Alabama as well. That we have some several interfaith organizations that we're building on, and our goal is really to coordinate and communicate the activities. So a lot of good things going individually, but we needed to coordinate and more of our efforts in the different communities throughout the state. And
Great,
educate.
Thank you. Was someone able to give that North Carolina update? Again, it's *6 to mute and also to unmute yourself. Getting a little bit of background noise. Okay. Well, as we approach the 6 o'clock starting hour, I'm going to take you all out of here a little early. You can mute yourselves again by pressing *6. Please press *6. Okay, great.
I just wanted to say thank you to everyone. This is Hassan Ahmed from McLean, Virginia. Just wanted to thank everyone for coming in, and I feel a lot better after hearing so much positivity from so many corners of the country. So this did me some good today. I just encourage everyone to keep the conversation going.
Could you spell your name, please? So I've got. Is it Hassan or is it?
It's Hassan. Yeah, you got it. Hassan.
I got Hassan. Okay, yeah,
Yep.
because we're not that far from. Some of us would like to visit sometime, and
Come by.
I might look you up. Pardon?
Anytime.
Okay, the Adams. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. That was
Absolutely.
a great illustration of some of these local connections that are being made. So as a reminder, just in terms of closing and next steps, if you haven't already, please be in touch with one of the organizers so that we know about you and your support and your help. You can either email me at liza.lieberman@is.org.
Could you say that? We've got the background interference again.
it's on the chat. It's liza.lieberman@hive.org. I'm the one that sent the materials a little bit before the call, and I'll also send the follow-up materials. Also, Bill Mefford was the one who made some of these local connections. His contact information is mefford@au.org. Or you can put your information into the chat right now. If you RSVP'd for the call, we already have your information. So I'm just going to identify 3 of the many opportunities to engage right now. And again, if you email us your information, we'll make sure that you're connected locally and that you'll receive all the many opportunities to engage. But I just want to highlight 3 things right now. The first one is most immediate. Tomorrow morning, as Jen told us, the Senate will begin their confirmation hearings for some of President-elect Trump's nominees for secretary positions, some of which have real influence over refugees and immigration issues in general. So we really need you to go to interface.
I'm sorry, your voice is so faint.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry,
Is
your
this
voice
better?
is super faint. Go ahead.
Is this better now?
Hardly. Not by much.
One moment. Let me see if I can get you on here.
Are you on a speakerphone or?
Yeah, so this might be better. Is that better?
That's better.
Oh, that's much better.
Okay, great.
And then we'll need the Liza thing again because I really couldn't get that. I got Mefford.
Okay. All right. So my email address is liza.lieberman, liza.lieberman @highest.org, and the website I'd like you to go to is interfaithimmigration.org/confirmation hearings. And tomorrow morning, the Senate will begin hearing from the appointees, and we need to make sure that they are being held accountable for their views on refugees and immigrants, and we need to make sure that America stands up to its legacy of welcoming refugees. So that, I would say, is the most immediate. Again, that begins tomorrow morning. So that is one thing. The second one is I want to call your attention to the Refugee Council USA toolkit that Jen spoke about earlier. This is a great tool to get some talking points and ideas for programming, and also some of the information about, how are refugees resettled here. Many of us know this process very well, and others of us are new to this work. How does this intersect with immigration issues going on in my community? And it's a great resource to really get your wheels turning on how to raise up these issues and communicate your support with congressional offices. So that is number 2. Number 3 is Refugees Welcome, and I really hope that everyone who participated today, if you're not already involved, that you will get involved with the Refugees Welcome campaign. As Sharon mentioned, the next webinar for that group will be on January 30th at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. So we will make sure to circulate that and all the other information. And I think unless anyone has any final things to add, I think I'm going to let you all go a little early so that you can call your members of Congress and make sure that they know that you support refugees. Sharon or Bill, did you have anything else to add?
Hey,
Liza.
Liza, sorry. This is Sharon. We heard from Allison from North Carolina that she was having some problems with the audio. Allison Mahaley. Adamu, are you still on the line, or is there anyone else who wanted to report for North Carolina? Don't forget to press *6 or we won't be able to hear you. Adamu is on, but via computer. Okay. Well, sorry. And Allison said she emailed her report to Bill. Good. So that the North Carolina report, it sounds like, can be a part of what gets sent out. Thanks.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, with that, thank you, everyone. Thank you to our presenters. Thank you to everyone who called in and moderated the state-local conversations and took notes. And most of all, thank you to all of you for the work that you're doing and your incredible support for refugees and immigrants and other newcomers. Together, we will make a difference, and I look forward to working with all of you.